And one of the comments I want to make about the courage to be courageous is for everyone at the facility of Saint Judes Research Hospital. What I'm talking about, of course, is the children, the kids, but also their parents, the doctors who are courageous there, the nurses that are courageous there, the whole staff, the scientists. It is a powerful, powerful organization with one primary purpose in mind: beat childhood cancer. And they will not stop until childhood cancer is beaten. They have the best facility in the world. They have the cutting edge technology. They have doctors from all over the world. You go into the Danny Thomas arena and you see the flags hanging from the ceiling. There's over 100 flags hanging from the ceiling of doctors, the best of the best from all over the world, are there at St. Jude to be able to stamp out childhood cancer. It's a powerful, powerful organization. I would like to invite all of you to learn more about St. Jude's. Many of us know who they are. Many of us know that they do fight childhood cancer, but I don't think we understand the powerfulness, the depth that they go to stamp out this horrible disease. I think most of us know children who have had cancer or have struggled with it. So we've all been affected by someone who's had cancer. And if you've seen children, and you have children or grandchildren, it's a possibility that any of our kids could have this disease. Some of them maybe do not get diagnosed till they're 14 years old. And then they have to face that. I'd like to encourage all of you to learn more about the St. Jude organization. I was talking to one of the fellows at the podcast here named Brennan, and I asked him, what can we do to let the younger ones know more about it? He says, just make them aware of it. Let's get you deeply aware of that. You cannot donate to something that you don't even know exists or don't know much about it. Danny Thomas made an interesting comment. As I said before, and I'll emphasize it again, no child should ever die in the dawn of its life. But he also made another comment. I would rather have $1 from 1 million people than $1 million from one person. And I think that's such an encouraging thing. Even $1, your daughter is going to be spent saving lives. So keep that in mind and think of the courage that these kids have, the parents have, the doctors have, the scientists have, to be courageous in what they do. Because cancer does create fear. The worst thing you can hear from a doctor is that your child has cancer. That's fearful. They don't run from it. They realize it's fearful. They said, okay, it's fearful, but we're going to embrace it and we're going to use courage to destroy it. And that's their whole philosophy. So my experience here at St. Judes was something that I didn't feel I would have this deep of a connection to. I've known about St. Jude's for years. That's one of the reasons I have him in my trust. But I didn't understand the depth of what they do, how deep they go to be able to stamp out childhood cancer. This is one of the bravest, courageous organizations that I personally know, and I want to continue to do what I can to be able to support them. I want to read a couple of quotes from their magazine, the Inspired magazine. This is a quote, said, St. Jude doctors use the generic information to avoid over or under treatment. The genetic information learned also could help by identifying inherited cancer genes. There is also a greater emphasis on quality of life issues with St. Jude's staff, working to help survivors thrive into adulthood. And I would like to read you another quote that I think is also so powerful. This is a quote by Mario, which is Luna's dad, the one we talked about earlier that is fighting childhood cancer from Guatemala. He said, "There's a humanity at St. Jude that I just don't think exists anywhere else." And I have to echo those words too. It's a really powerful organization. So I'm asking you to do some research. I'll give you a couple of contacts here that you can go to understand, to read some of the inspiring stories, to see some of the inspiring videos to help us to realize how we can help individuals who are going through this in their generation, the kids that are surviving cancer, and also the 20% that don't survive. That's the sad part. They've come from 20% of survival to 80% survival, but that means 20% are not surviving. Let me give you a couple of contact information. If you'd like to donate to St. Jude, there's several ways you can do it. If you go to stjude.org, STJUDE, no period after Saint, just the initials, stjude.org/impact giving, or you can go to stjude.org. I'd also like to give you an individual's name that is the representative for this area of Arizona, and you're going to find in all the major cities throughout the United States, they have representatives there that you can contact and be able to give you more information if you want to be a lifetime donor or if you want to dedicate your trust or your will to them. But even if it's only $5 or $10, you're helping save people's life. Remember what Danny Thomas said? $1 million done by $1 by 1 million people is better than $1 million from one person. So your $1, if you're out there and you have $1 to donate, I'd encourage you to be able to do that. I'd like to also make a comment, too, about the gentleman that I talked to who's been so helpful for me. His name is Tyler Mankey. And let me spell that for you. Of course, Tyler, Tyler. Mankey is MAHNKE. And he is the representative here for Arizona. And his email number is tyler.mankey, ALSAC.org. That's tyler.mankey, ALSAC.org. So if you have any questions with him and want to contact him or email him, feel free to do that. Or you can also contact me on my website, where this interview will be up probably in the next week or two, www.danbolen.com. Well, it's such a pleasure to give you some input about Saint Judes Research Hospital and the courageous impact they've had on my life. And I want to encourage all, whatever they can do in any organization you can provide assistance for, to continue doing that. But take a look at St. Jude's. By the way, they didn't ask me to do this podcast. I do this because I was so impacted and taken back by the powerful courageousness the whole organization shows. If you ever get the opportunity to get to Memphis, be sure to check them out. Unfortunately, they're not able to have visits with the children. We weren't able to see the children unless you could see them outside, but we're able to see the facility. And I encourage you to do that and meet the family, a powerful family. So thank you all for sharing on my broadcast today. This is Dan Bolen, and always encourage you to be able to be courageous and be your authentic self. And thank you for listening today. I'd like to welcome all of you to my podcast. This is the Courage to be Courageous, and I'm your host, Dan Bolen. This is a place where you can come to hear people all over the United States who has faced fear and have the courage to walk through their fear and become their authentic self, and have reached a place in their life where they are authentically peaceful and happy. I'm going to give you an incredible program today. I just had the opportunity to return from Memphis, Tennessee, where I was able to tour the Saint Judes Children's Hospital and Research Center. It was an opportunity for me to see a part of Memphis and a part of an organization that I donate a lot of income to in my will and trust. And I was invited as a lifetime member to come enter their facility. And I spent part of 3 days there, and let me tell you, talk about courage to be courageous. Now we're going to talk a little bit about St. Jude's. Many I know have heard about it. It's very well known and advertised on TV and through media. But let me give you a little history that I learned about St. Jude's. First of all, it was founded by Danny Thomas. Many of you may know who he is, a comedian and actor. And it was founded in 1962. Now, what was interesting is Danny Thomas, in his first days where he was not popular, in the beginning of his days where he's not popular, he was living in New York, and his wife was pregnant in the hospital. And in order for him to get her out of the hospital, he had to have $70. Well, he didn't have $70. So he went into St. Jude's and prayed to St. Jude's in prayer and said, I only have $7, and I'm going to give that $7 to you as a contribution. And I will hope through prayer that you will be able to give me an opportunity to get my wife out of the hospital. And sure enough, just shortly after that, the same day, he was contacted with an organization in New York to do a little comedy gig, and guess what they paid him? $75. So he was able to get his wife out of the hospital and also their newborn son. Now, many of you know that Marlo Thomas, of course, from That Girl, that television show, is now taken over a lot of the headquarters and has done an incredible job. But I want to tell you a little bit about Danny Thomas. Danny Thomas always had an interest in children. He wanted to take care of children. He hoped to open a hospital someday so he could take care of children. And he decided that he wanted in the south part of the United States. Many of you may know that Memphis, Tennessee was certainly during the civil unrest, a lot of segregation was going on. In fact, as many of you may know, Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. But he wanted to place it there because he knew that regardless of the color of their skin or their religion or nationality, all kids have a right to be able to not die in the dawn of their life. And that was a comment that he made. I don't want them to die in the dawn of their life. So he wanted to get money, and as he started getting more popular and getting paid more, he still needed some to help him out to found this humongous project of putting a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And guess what? One of the persons that helped him with that, I'm sure all of you have heard of Elvis Presley. Well, Elvis and Danny became friends, and Elvis, in fact, was able to buy a yacht that was owned by President Eisenhower at the time, the President of the United States, and he bought it for $55,000. I actually saw the check in the Graceland when I was touring there. He bought the boat from the Eisenhower administration, which was Eisenhower's private yacht, for $55,000. And then he gave it and signed it over to Danny Thomas so he would have whatever he could get out of that. He knew he would get more than $55,000 because now you have a yacht not only did Eisenhower own, but Elvis Presley. And he sold the yacht for $75,000 and was able to be Elvis was a major contributor to the growth of the organization. Now I want to say some things about St. Jude. I was so taken back and so, I guess you would say, humbled to understand this organization and what it stands for and what it means for our children today. As I mentioned, I spent 3 days there. This is the only organization in the world that does what they do. No other organization on the face of the earth does what they do. And let's talk about some of the things that they do. There is never a bill for anything from St. Jude's. When a patient arrives there with their son or daughter, who is a child, they walk through the doors, they are greeted as a family member, and no bills are given to them, ever. They're never billed for anything. Their medication, the surgery, their housing, and their food is provided for them. Danny Thomas felt the only thing that a parent needs to do is to worry about taking care of their child and not being bankrupt by the huge amount of money that would cost to save their children. There's never a bill for anything. Isn't that amazing? It's interesting also that when they first started off, they started with one building in 1962. Now they have probably over 25 buildings. And they're still expanding and still developing more and more buildings. In fact, while I was there, the Domino's Pizza Corporation has given a large grant to Saint Judes Research Hospital, and they're building a huge 1, 2, and 3 bedroom unit there for families to be able to stay. It's interesting if you look at their campus, and this truly is a campus. And let me tell you a little bit about the campus. Children, these kids, when they come there, they're fearful, of course, and so are their parents fearful. I think over 400,000 kids a year have cancer. And they're very fearful. And then they walk through those doors, you're going to see fear on their faces. So the organization tries to make their facility a family for them by providing everything they need. And let me tell you some of the things that they provide for them. They provide schooling for them. They will put them in contact with their teachers from the area which they come, or they will teach them, and you can go all the way from kindergarten or pre-kindergarten all the way through high school. They even have a prom and a graduation for the older ones. Because some of these kids there are there 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They have a science room. They have a salon. Think about what it's like for these kids to lose their hair. They have a music room. And let me tell you one of the most powerful things I saw when I was there. They have a science room. And let me tell you what they do in the science room. They bring the kids in, they sit them down with the doctor, and they actually take them over to a microscope and show them through the microscope what their cancer looks like. So these kids are looking at the cancer that they have. And then the doctor says to them, this is what we're fighting, and this is what we're going to win over. We're going to stop this cancer. We're not going to let it win. And this is what we're fighting. Let's fight the cancer. It gives these kids a sense of encouragement and courageousness, realizing they have seen what they're fighting. What a powerful, powerful thing they're doing with them. They provide quiet time for families. You know, you got to realize these kids are undergoing treatment continually, painful treatment, chemotherapy, uh, bone marrow transplants. They're going through this continually. They are courageous. These kids are courageous, and their parents are courageous. They're not running from the fear, they're embracing the fear, and they're showing courage to get through it. I was so overwhelmed when I saw what they were able to do. It's interesting that one doctor that we had interviewed as we were having meals together said, "This is not a hospital of just ending cancer. It's a hospital of survivorship and quality of life." They want to beat cancer. They don't want any child to ever have cancer. So they're just not concerned with beating the cancer. They're concerned about giving these kids a quality of life and a survivorship. And they stick with them from beginning through end. And even after they're gone from the campus, maybe they're there 10 years or 12 years, they continually follow up with them year after year after year after year. And they pay for that. Because there are side effects from some of these treatments that they take. They don't want to, in each individual patient is given their own program, their own facility, their own medication that's tailor-made just for them. But they don't want to over-medicate or under-medicate, because what can happen, particularly for women, they may become infertile. And so they want them to have, as it says, a survivorship and a quality of life, because many of these kids grow up and want to have children and want to have families. So they want to make that possible by being able to treat each individual specifically for their needs. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the survivor rate of childhood cancer. When Danny Thomas opened the facility in 1962, their survivorship was 20%. Now, they just celebrated their 60-year anniversary, and their survival rate is 80%. Now, one of the most key kinds of cancer is called acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It's called ALL. It's the most common in children. Now, they started, as I mentioned, at 20%. Now, with ALL, it's actually almost 94%. But overall cancer is about 80%. Now, they've took on some new events and some new programs and some new challenges. One of the recent things they did, and it was released in 2021, is called sickle cell. And this is a certain type of disease. And they developed the first international program for treating it inside the uterus of a woman. They can predict it. They can treat it before the child is born. It's a world-class event. What an incredible thing they have done to be able to give this organization, what this organization has done to give people their life. Now, one of the things I want to make a comment about is the research that goes on at Saint Judes. Research goes on here and is well known all over the world. There's a whole treatment facility there, which we were able to tour. I think it's called the Inspiration Building. The whole building is for research. Now, keep in mind that these individuals, scientists that work in research, 90% of their job is failure. 10% of it, they get results. Can you imagine doing something where 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, you're going to fail? Well, they do that. They go back and they go back and they go back until they can find the treatment, the medication that is going to help each individual person. And these researchers do this day after day, year after year, year after year. And then the research passes on the information to the doctors and surgeons that are able to do that. And to see these scientists, we were able to see two of them, a doctor and also the scientist on stage. And it was incredible to see the courage that they have to be able to stamp out childhood cancer. What's fascinating, too, there's so many things I can talk about, but there's one thing I really want to talk about, a couple of stories here that we were able to hear. Many of the patients who survive cancer there, and some of them come there as small children, some of them are there for 5, 10, 8 years. They become employees. This is a family to them. And when we were there being toured by the employees of Saint Judes Research Hospital, they truly are a family. These employees talk to each other with respect. They talk to each other with kindness. And you know what? You're drawn into that family. You really are drawn in. Now, one of the individuals there that was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age, her name was Lisa, and she gave a talk. She's now probably in her, I would say, late 20s maybe. She came in and had serious cancer. I believe it was the kind that was ALL. She came in, and obviously she started chemo treatment, and she was laying there and woke up one morning, and all of a sudden she saw a big bundle of her blonde hair laying on the pillow. And she said to the lady or the nurse there, she said, "My hair is falling out." And the lady said, "Yes, it is. I'll return in a minute." She left and she brought in a pair of clippers. And she said, "You know what? Cancer will take your hair. Or Lisa, you can take your own hair. You take your own hair. Don't let cancer take your hair." And she cut off her own hair. And she said that was such a powerful step for her. Cancer is not going to control my life. I'm going to control my life. She was able to meet her husband there, who was also a patient. Obviously, they fell in love, and she now works as an employee there as well. I thought that was such a powerful statement about taking control of her life there. There was a family that I was able to see a video of called the O'Brien family, Kevin O'Brien. And his daughter was named Katie. And he talked about coming to St. Jude and obviously being concerned about losing his daughter to cancer. She was very young at the time, I'm guessing 7, 8 years old. And he said they became a family. They welcomed you. They don't talk about the cancer all the time. They talk about the hope your children's going to have by being there, the hope that we have to beat out cancer. And Katie was such a trooper. She was able to embrace the fear, show courage to get through it. And she, unfortunately, was able to get the cancer stopped, and then it reoccurred again, to the point that St. Jude was not able to save her life. So they stopped the chemo. And Katie said to her dad, "Dad, do I get a no chemo party?" See, what happens when they stop chemo at St. Jude's, they get what is called a chemo party. And they have that with balloons and confetti, and we have a no chemo party. It's a celebration. And she said, "Dad, do I get a no chemo party? Am I going to have more chemo?" He says, "No, honey, you're not." "Well, why can't I have a no chemo party then?" Now, she was dying. And so the staff give her a no chemo party. And that was such a powerful thing to me. she wasn't concentrating on her death. She was concentrating on the hope of being able to do something that was important to her, which was a no chemo party. Again, what a powerful, powerful story. There's one that was in their latest magazine, spring of 2023. It just came out. I just read it yesterday. It's about a little girl named Luna who has ALL, and her dad's name is Mario, and they're from Guatemala. And so she struggled with it. They were able to give her a bone marrow transplant. They were able to get her radiation and chemo. And she did well. And so she was well enough to go home back to Guatemala. Well, they found out several months later that the cancer was returning. And so they asked her to come back to Saint Judes and get another bone marrow transplant. She's there right now getting medication and getting support and getting the best thing she can. Now, she's losing vision in her eyes, so they provided a big magnifying glass for her to be able to see pictures of zoo animals. But when you see her in the pictures of her, she's happy. She was named after the sun. And I believe that's a good name for her, Luna, is because she is bright like the sun. She is powerful like the sun. She is courageous like the sun. So let's keep our hopes and thoughts in prayer for Luna and hope she'll be able to recover from this horrible disease of cancer.